OBJ. That's strangely close to Daniel Jones from the Giants. Daniel, is that you? Beat the Chiefs. Show me. If the Broncos and Russell Wilson can show me that they can beat the Chiefs, then I will start believing.
And the crowd up. And so are this defense, and Kansas City won't snap the ball again. The Denver Broncos have beaten the Kansas City Chiefs.
Dave Montgomery on the Lions, former Bear, gonna make this his revenge game for sure. David Montgomery gets the touchdown that ices the game. No! And there's a flag. There's flag. There's flag. There's flag. There's flag. Snap. Hold. Kick.
Denver wins! Denver wins! Let's go!
They open. No!
What happened? Oh shit.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the only football podcast tonight. We're going to break down the NFC divisions schedules. We did the AFC last week. It is NFC time tonight. We're also going to go over the most vulnerable division winners from last year, talk about whether they will or will not, what we think, if they will or will not win the division. And of course, we're going to end it all off with the Chives with Kyle. Let's get it. America is football.
Football is America. If you don't like it, you can kiss your candy ass. For the moment in time, I don't give a damn. Oh my god!
No!
You loved it.
30 to 27.
No!
Chiefs win. Chiefs
No!
win 30 to 20. Woo!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Only Football Podcast. I'm Kyle, and that's Rick.
I think that's Kyle.
And today it's gonna be a continuation of where we left off last week when we went over the AFC schedule and we cut it short. It wasn't, it was planned. It wasn't an accident because we wanted to really dive into the NFC, of course, because Bill's a Giants fan. You're a Bears fan. I got some Packer in me. There's
I bet you do.
Oh my God. So when I was a kid, we were at Spencer's and my brother was like probably 7 and I was 5. And my brother was yelling at me that I was a fudge packer. And my mom, no, we had no idea because we just thought it was like the Packers. My mom had to pull us aside and be like, don't say that.
And it's true to this day. It's true to this day.
True to this day. So, that whole I got some Packer in me goes farther and deeper than you could know. Oh my God.
My God. It just keeps building.
Oh God, it's gonna get worse. Okay. Let's get right into it. We're gonna talk about the NFC, and I'm really excited about it because the Bears and the Lions and the Packers, this is like a new upcoming division. Yeah. I'm not sure if you want to start with the NFC North or a different division, but all of them are exciting in their own way. Let's save the NFC North. Let's save it. Let's start off with whatever division you want.
I was going to say, Bill's in the chat. Let's start off with the NFC East. Let's start off with the NFC East.
Okay.
Because I do want to get into like we did last week, the good and the bad about some of the things that these teams are going to face during the 2024 season per the schedule. So, again, Bill's in the chat. We'll start off with the NFC East. I want to start off, though, with the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys last year were doing extremely well against the division. Over the past 3 seasons, they've gone 15-3. So they get to play 3 NFC East teams in a 4-game span starting in week 10. So what does that mean, right? Like at week 10, we know for the most part which teams are already looking to be getting playoff ready. I mean, there's still 8 weeks left. But if the Dallas Cowboys are having that much success over the last 3 seasons against their very own division opponents, I mean, three of those 4 games starting in week 10, that's a very, very good buildup possibly moving into the postseason. So for the Cowboys, I mean, that right there is a very, very good thing, Kyle.
Yeah, I'm looking at this schedule. Of course, Tom Brady's first game as an announcer is going to be that Dallas Cleveland game. So excited for that. Not really related to the Cowboys, but just something to note. Then after that, let's assume that the Dallas Cowboys are a better team than the Cleveland Browns. Then they get New Orleans. So you're looking at probably a 2-0 start, and then a real test coming week 3. This is going to be a home game against the Baltimore Ravens. That is going to be a really good football game early in the season. And then a game on Thursday Night Football. It's going to have, the NFL season, we're like down all the way to week 4 right now, but it happens in the blink of an eye. Like, you got Cleveland, New Orleans, Baltimore, and then Thursday night, before you blink, the Giants and Cowboys will be playing week 4. The Cowboys will either be, probably 3-1 or 2-2. And we're going to talk about the Cowboys later with, vulnerable teams and whether they're going to be able to keep the crown of that division. Don't forget about the Eagles. It's still a really tough division, in my opinion. But yeah, I see a Thursday night. I got 2 Sunday nights, 2 Monday nights, actually 3 Sunday nights, 2 Monday nights, and then a Thanksgiving game. So plenty of primetime football games. I'm trying to see. I would say the hardest stretch is probably going to be, if I had to pick, honestly, this isn't a bad schedule. And there's a lot of teams, especially in the AFC, where you look at it and you're like, oh my God, it just keeps going. Like the Steelers, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Philly, Baltimore, Kansas City, Bengals. It's just like shit. But you look at the Cowboys schedule and it's like, okay, they play a tough game against Baltimore, and then they play the Giants. No offense, Bill, but the Giants are on the top. Then you got Pittsburgh and Detroit, and then a bye week, and then San Francisco. That's the hardest stretch, I would say.
I was going to say it is, and especially because the Cowboys were 12-5 last season. All 5 of those losses are on the road. So when you said, the New York Giants, then Pittsburgh, Detroit, then San Francisco, 4 out of those 5 games, including Atlanta and their bye week, 4 out of those 5 weeks, they're on the road. So like you said, I totally agree, that is probably going to be their toughest stretch, but mostly because they are on the road. And again, all 5 of those losses last year came on the road. And that's what I think is probably their worst part about their schedule, because like you said, I mean, it for the most part, it doesn't seem like a terrible schedule. And yes, you have to go to New York to face the Giants. But it's about those Pittsburgh games, it's about those San Francisco games, it's about those Atlanta games. And 4 out of those 5 weeks, you're not at home. So that's probably the roughest part. So I totally agree with what you're saying.
And we'll see, we'll see about Atlanta. I know you crowned them as soon as Kirk Cousins made that. But we'll see. Raheem Morris, new coaching staff. The fact that you got a quarterback out of Washington, I'm blanking on his name right now. Penix is there. I just need to see it unfold in order to really buy in. But yeah, Atlanta is a tough team, and then they'll play Philly and Houston. So you could say that stretch is really tough, right? But you also got a Cincinnati Bengals game sandwiched between the Giants and Panthers. And then you got Tampa and Philly, but then Washington. So I think it's spread out pretty evenly. But this is definitely one of those teams where from week 5 to week 10, it's going to be the bread and butter of their schedule. And that's going to kind of tell us a lot about them. And I think if you're a Cowboys fan, this is totally doable. And I mean, especially after coming off, maybe Dak Prescott's best season as a quarterback. I know it doesn't feel like it because of the way it ended, but he did have a great year with Mike McCarthy calling the plays and taking over. And they did lose Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator that's kind of been holding this crew together, to the Commanders, a rivalry. And yeah, I think they'll be all right with, Mike. I mean, I expect some natural regression without Dan Quinn there, but
Definitely.
is it enough to, make them lose another 5 games? I'm not sure.
Yeah. And now we move on to Bills Giants. And let's talk about the Giants, right? Because they're a team that definitely lost some players. They're getting Danny Dimes back, but only time will tell whether that's a good or bad thing. One of the good things though about their schedule is the first 2 weeks they will face possibly 2 rookie QBs in JJ McCarthy against the Vikings, as well as Jaden Daniels against the Commanders. It depends, what the Vikings see in Sam Darnold, what Kevin O'Connell, whether he wants to go with the rookie or whether he wants to go with Sam Darnold. I do think they're going to go with Sam Darnold, but regardless, the possibility is there that they can start JJ McCarthy. So they're going to start off somewhat of a easier couple weeks again with Jaden Daniels and that Washington Commanders team that let up a ton of sacks, and against the Vikings, who, yes, they have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson, but they got Sam Darnold, who is coming from a completely different team. It's just a new quarterback, new face, right? It's not Kirk Cousins, so who knows how Sam Darnold's going to be, and if they go with JJ McCarthy, that rookie uncertainty, which all rookie quarterbacks are going to have, that's definitely a factor there. So that's what I like about the Giants schedule for sure, is them the possibility of facing those 2 quarterbacks there. They get a tough assignment against Cleveland in week 3, and then Dallas, and then Seattle, and then Cincinnati. So to start off the season, 2 out of those 6 or so games looking good, but then you get once that week 3 at Cleveland happens, it's going to be a toughie.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Week 4 to week 8, it's going to be difficult. Dallas, Seattle, Cincinnati, Philly, Pittsburgh. But then you got a Washington game. Who knows how good Washington's going to be? They're a little bit of a wild card this year, and then Germany against the Panthers. And then you hit the bye week. I think the bye week comes at a good time around week 11. That's a good time to hit a bye. You can get a bye too early. You can get a bye too late, like Denver got one in week 14. This is a good spot, I think. And then, it's a doable schedule, but there's just a lot of uncertainty. And I'm not going to say anything about the Vikings because you said that, but I have a whole thing about the Vikings coming up. I'm going to save that for the Vikings.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I think the Giants, it's kind of an unknown, right? Brian Dable exceeded the expectations year 1. Year 2 didn't go as well. It's funny, in year 1 for Dable, it was actually the Vikings that he beat in the playoffs in Minnesota.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So if there seems to be some kind of unknown tension between these 2 teams, it's probably because you remember that game somewhere deep in your mind. But yeah, and then I think the schedule finishes with 2 tough games. I don't think Indy's an easy game, but they are at home for it, and then playing Philly at the end of the season is always a tough task. But Philly maybe not playing starters for that game. But with the NFC East being a tight race most years, who knows? Even when Philly 2 years ago, when they were winning, what were they, 12-0 at one point? They still had to play Jalen Hurts week 18 to secure the number 1 seed. So, never say never, but I do think at some point we're going to see Drew Lock in the football game. And this is Drew Lock's first time with an offensive mind. I was just talking about this on the interview, but you had Vic Fangio, you had Pete Carroll, and now you get Brian Dable. I think it's just the right time. And don't be surprised if Drew Lock wins that job over Daniel Jones.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like you said, the last 5 weeks, 2 of them are away, 3 of them are away. So again, kind of a tough task for the Giants, and actually last 6 games. So it's a 3-3 split there. Sorry, I thought it was a majority away. But still a tough schedule. And you mentioned, will we see um Drew Lock there? I mean, will we see Tommy Tuds too? Will we see,
Bill
Tommy
wants to.
Tuds?
I know
Bill
Bill's
wants Tommy
excited.
Tuds bad. Yeah. So it'll be interesting for the Giants, right? To kind of like, again, because of the toughness of their schedule, how they start off. Where does Danny Dimes play into this whole thing? And who will we see at week 18, right? Or week
Yeah.
17? So
And
very, very interesting.
the last thing I'll say about the Giants is I think this is really favorable for the Giants. You don't see anywhere on their schedule where they play more than 2 road games in a row. And
Oh, nice.
actually, when does that happen? Week 2 and week 3. And who's it against? Washington and Cleveland. Not the most difficult place in the world to have to do this. They get to open up with a home game. If they can get that win, then all of a sudden they have their their longest stretch away from home, week 2 and week 3. And then every away game they have after that is followed up by one or multiple home games. So that's pretty good.
Nice. And Bill's saying he's going to buy that Tommy Cutlets jersey. I saw Caleb Williams in his uniform, by the way, Bill. I didn't forget that comment. He looked good. He looked good. All right, moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles get to play 4 of their final 5 games at home. They went 13-4 at Lincoln Financial over the past 2 seasons. So similar to the Dallas Cowboys and how well they've fared over the last 3 seasons in the division. At home, the Phillies are almost unbeatable. 13-4. Yeah. What was that?
The Phillies.
No, the Eagles.
When did we start that?
The Philly Eagles. They are almost unbeatable at Lincoln Financial over the past 2 seasons. So to be able for those 4 out of the 5 games to be at home, I mean, we talk about how important that is for a team who is possibly looking at the postseason by week 10 or 12, somewhere around there is when you're generally, again, like looking for it. That's important. That's important towards the end of the season. The bad thing I will say, in week 10, starting in week 10, Cowboys, Rams, Ravens, over a span of 4 games, tough for the Eagles because remember last season, we thought they had a tough assignment against the Chiefs. The Chiefs, that was a tough game that they won. But you could tell that they beat the shit out of the Eagles, and they were just never the same after that. So that stretch right there could possibly be either a very, very good stretch where the Eagles are playing really good football and they look like a team destined to go back to the postseason, this time hopefully with a division crown instead of a wild card, or it could be another one of those Chiefs games where they clearly got their shit kicked in and they're going to struggle for the rest of the season.
And don't forget about the Commanders. It's all fun and games, but the Commanders always play the Eagles really tough, even last year with Sam Howell. And now you take Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator from the Dallas Cowboys, and who knows the Eagles, better than the Cowboys, right? I mean, it's a perfect fit. And it's kind of like an underrated storyline. Like imagine a defensive coordinator for the Bears, let's say Vic Fangio, right? Long time kind of, and then he becomes the Packers head coach, right? I mean, that
shit.
Yeah. So it's kind of a little underrated storyline, but expect the Commanders to play the Eagles really tough. That's far from an easy game. And that's why one of them's on prime time and Thursday night.
Yeah.
And then, I the NFC East, honestly, their schedules are all similar in some way. You kind of, hit it with the final, 4 of the final 5 games being home games.
Yeah.
That's huge. That's a bigger advantage than really I'm seeing on any other team in the NFC East. But you do got a game against Jacksonville that the other teams don't have. I expect Jacksonville to be a more challenging than they were last year, but they are playing that game at home. So
something to look forward to.
Yeah, hardest stretch. Honestly, a hardest stretch is either week 1 and week 2, or it's week 12 and week 13. I mean, that's not.
Yeah, LA Rams, Baltimore.
Green Bay, Atlanta.
Yeah, I really love these division games at the end of the season too. I mean, it is something that is across the league pretty much, right? But God, I just love them so much because they really can determine whether you get in the postseason or not, depending on where everything is. And Bill's already starting the division hate. He's saying, fuck it. Eagles going 0-17 this season. I fucking love it. I was
We'll
just
see.
talking to Kyle real quick. I was just talking to Kyle about how I joined a NFC North Facebook page, and it is just like meme after insult, and I absolutely love it because I'm trolling everybody.
And the man, there was one more thing I wanted to say. Oh yeah. So I mentioned this last episode, but I have never in my life seen the NFL schedule look this way. If you go through every single game, week 1 and week 18 have always been 80% divisional games, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the NFL stayed true to that week 18, right? Washington
Yeah.
plays the Cowboys.
Mm-hmm.
Philly plays the Giants, Packers play the Bears, Vikings play the Lions. I mean, that's how it normally is week 1 as well. The NFL kind of abandoned that this year for the first time, and I believe there was only 2 divisional games week 1. That
Oh, really?
pushes like 75% of those games that are normally knocked out week 1 into random parts of the season. I kind of like it. It's definitely different, and you're going to see a lot of week 1 games that are like, really, the Packers and Eagles? Like, what, it's always Packers and Bears or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a different tone, and I'm excited to see it. But yeah.
Yeah, and it's something that I will mention too, at least for my Bears later on when we get to them. Um,
Ooh.
Moving on to the last team in the NFC East, the Washington Commanders. One good thing for them is their December schedule. They land the week 14 bye. They get to play 3 teams that missed the playoffs last season: the Titans, the Saints, and the Falcons. Obviously, the Falcons are one of those teams that I always like to predict the NFC South in the offseason. I've done it for 2 years in a row, and I'm probably just going to do it. It's going to be a thing for me. But the Falcons, I think, out of those 3 are the most improved. The Saints, they went with an offensive lineman in the draft, as well as the Titans. The Titans did beef up their wide receiver core, though. So look out for that, right? But again, they missed the playoffs, and while we don't necessarily take strength of schedule from last season into account for how hard it is for them in terms of playing ability going to be this season, but it's still something to note, right? Obviously, we all expect the Falcons to improve, but that week 14 bye, and even 3 out of those 4 weeks, you get a dub, right? Because everybody comes out with a dub after the bye week. The toughest assignment for them is going to be that Falcons team. The bad thing, the AFC North, that gauntlet starts in week 3 with the Bengals. And then week 5 versus the Browns, week 6 against the Ravens. So, out of those 6 weeks, they're going to have to be playing the AFC North, which we really did think almost all those teams were probably going to try to make the playoffs. I mean, the Bengals were the only ones that were really out of it. The Steelers made a wild card. So that division is going to get tougher with Joe Burrow back at quarterback. So while the Commanders, they have a really nice December schedule, it's going to be tough for them once they start that AFC North trip.
Yeah, and I mentioned last week that I don't really like the way the NFL does the strength of schedule because it's based on the results of the 2023 season, but I'll give a little sneak peek at the one that I'm building right now. And all I'll say with the Commanders is so much for long road trips. The Commanders will travel 10,550. I think it was 10,550. Yep, 10,550 air miles. That is the lowest in the NFL this year. So not a ton of traveling. I think their furthest game was a away game against the Arizona Cardinals, but that's definitely a really underrated advantage that doesn't get considered enough. I mean, You're not flying all over. I mean, that really takes a toll. You got no international games. You're
Zero West Coast.
zero West Coast games. You got one game against Arizona, and then you go down, the rest of these games, and it's like, okay, even the game against Seattle is a home game. The schedule really came nice together. I believe no, not Seattle. It was they had one game that was, I think, kind of far away. No, they have nothing. It's all like
Literally,
a 2-hour
Arizona's
flight.
the only one. Yeah, the Arizona one is the farthest west they go because everything else is either Central Time Zone or East Coast. And like you said, no international games for them, which is weird because they have Jaden Daniels, but also there's a very limited amount. So I guess you got to really make those prime time.
Yeah, for sure. But it kind of similar to the Cowboys, where like when they play the Bengals, it's sandwiched between the Giants and Cardinals. When they play Baltimore, it's sandwiched between the Browns and Panthers. Chicago is actually Chicago's Washington's most common playoff opponent. They've met 7 times in the postseason, with
Really?
Washington holding a 4-3 advantage. So that game could tie things up for Chicago if they can get that win. But a little bit of history there with the Bears, and maybe depending on how well year one goes, maybe Commanders are sneaky, and this is a wild card game. Like the Commanders Bears is not what it was last year. This is a new era. I think, like, how high I am on Jaden Daniels, and I think they're going to be coached well. I think the Commanders have, Dotson and McLaurin, like they'll be all right. They brought in Austin Eckler. They're going to be all right. It's just a matter of how fast they all kind of gel together.
I hate this comment by Nick. I speak for everyone born after 2000. The Bears have been to the postseason. I hate you. I hate you, Nick. I hate you.
2008.
2006, 2005, 2006, 2010, 12, 18, and technically I think 2020 when they lost. Because I think that was when they increased the wild cards during that COVID year. Yeah, so before I think they did it because of COVID, but Nick, I don't want to hear it. All right, let's move on to the NFC North. Like Kyle said, one of the up and coming divisions. Really, last year, I think until Kirk Cousins got hurt, we were looking mostly at the Vikings and the Lions. Then the emergence of Jordan Love came about. He started to play really well. The Packers, just in general, started playing really well down the stretch to get into the playoffs and destroyed the Dallas Cowboys in the playoffs. The Lions obviously went to the NFC Championship game, and the Vikings, after Kirk Cousins got hurt, kind of became a very mediocre team. The Bears were still technically sort of rebuilding, although they did have some life towards, the last third of the season to possibly get into the playoffs. But let's take a look, and let's start off with, the division champs. Start off with the Lions. I think this is
one thing real quick.
Yeah.
I just want to say this really quick. The Bears are getting the Texans treatment of last year. If you look at the Texans schedule last year, they didn't play any elite defenses until late in the season. Why did the Texans get rolling? Because they had momentum. They had games that boosted their confidence against Riddler in Atlanta. And you look at Chicago's schedule, no elite defenses until November. So that I just wanted to say, because you're about to go through these games, and that is just one thing that is like worth pointing out. If the NFL wanted Chicago to be back on the map, a major sports city, where like it's been a while, to be honest, since Chicago's really been on the map. It looks like the NFL is kind of throwing Chicago a bone, being like, look, you got time to get your ducks in a row, and we're going to open it up, pretty favorably.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that is definitely one of the biggest points of their schedule for sure. But like I said, let's start off with Detroit real quick, because this is a big point as far as Detroit. Weeks 1 through 15. Guess how many games they play outdoor, Kyle?
From what week?
From 1 to week 15.
How many games do they play outdoors?
Outdoors.
Um, I'm gonna I'm gonna guess 3.
I'm going to go with the Doctor Strange here. 1.
1?
One outdoors game. Week
What?
1 through 15. Remember when that reporter asked Todd Bowles, "Hey, are you worried about the weather in Detroit?" And he's like, "Well, I mean, for 2 minutes, I guess, when we get off the bus and go into the stadium." That's basically what the Lions are going to have to endure. They got one outdoors game week 1 through 15,
What
which
about
is awesome.
Tennessee and Carolina? That's 2 right there.
No, one outdoor game. I was like, are they playing at home?
Wait, but the Bears don't play in a dome.
Exactly.
So you got Tennessee, that's an outdoor game. And then you got Carolina
No,
week
but
5.
versus Tennessee, not at Tennessee.
Oh, you're saying how many away games are they playing outdoors?
No. Outdoor games in general.
So Tennessee and Carolina are both outdoor.
Okay, but they are in Detroit for those.
No. Carolina and Tennessee.
Yeah, the Detroit Lions will be at home versus Tennessee
Wait, you're
and
talking about Detroit right now?
yeah.
Oh, I
That's what
thought
I
you were
said.
talking about the Bears.
No.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
remember, I said we're starting with the Detroit Lions,
Oh,
the
my
division
bad.
champ.
I was
Yeah.
like why does he keep talking about the Lions?
Kyle, Kyle's just a silly goose that needs to go back in the pond. But the Detroit Lions play one outdoors game for the first 15 weeks of the season.
That's insane.
That's just insanity. That is such a unique thing for them to go through, especially the year after they won the division. And then, at least for the bad thing, after their week 5 bye, which is a little bit early, they have to play. Where is it? 4 out of their next 5 are away. Houston, at Green Bay, at Minnesota, division opponent, and then at Dallas. That I said that backwards, by the way. It's actually Dallas, Minnesota, at Green Bay, and then at Houston, with their only home game coming against Tennessee. So that middle of the season is going to be a tough stretch for them, at least for 5 weeks or so. And I think right around that time, or maybe it was later on in the season, is when Detroit started to show those what's his name? Dan, their coach, those
Dan,
moments.
uh,
Dan Campbell, those Dan
yeah.
Campbell moments where he was going it for it on 4th down and he kept going for it on 4th down, or he was going for 2. And it was at those points where we're like, okay, is Detroit a real team? Is Dan Campbell putting too much emotion into this? So those away games are going to be very, very important for them. It's probably the worst part of their schedule, in my opinion.
Yeah, they got 9 nationally televised games, 5 of them on primetime. They have an early bye week and a late Monday Night Football game. Late Monday Night Football is never really ideal late in the season.
Mm-hmm.
But what are you going to do about it? 4 of their final 6 games are divisional. So if you're talking about an NFC North that's going to be a tight race, it's going to be handled throughout that week. There'll be some kind of clarity, and it's always a good thing because it puts a lot of control. Like if you just take care of your own business, the division will work itself out.
Yeah.
And home games are front and back loaded. So they're going to open up with, 3 of their first 4 games are going to be at home, and they're going to have something similar kind of towards the end. Home, away, home. So the middle, they're going to have to, hit the road quite a bit. I think at Houston, I think they got a tough stretch with Green Bay, Houston, Jacksonville. And then they play Indy, then Chicago, then Green Bay again, then Buffalo, then Chicago, then 49ers. Like it's going to be tough, but it's the Detroit Lions or the NFC. They made it to the NFC Championship. They literally choked an all-time choke job, worst of the season. This should probably be the NFC defending champions. So I look at those teams and go, yeah, it's not going to be easy, but it's not going to be easy for those teams either.
Absolutely. And the Lions really haven't. I don't think they've regressed really in any way, at least in a major way during the offseason. I mean, you saw them sign Jared Goff to a long-term deal. They re-signed Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think Penei Sewell as well. So a lot of
They
their
got
core
Rakestraw
pieces,
too in the draft.
Rakestraw in the draft, yeah, to bolster that defense. So they haven't regressed in a major way like you see some of these teams even through the draft, even through free agency. So that's another positive for them because they seem to have at least a favorable schedule in terms of temperature control for themselves the first 15 weeks of the season, which is huge for any teams. If you're a team whose home stadium is outdoors like the Bears, it sucks because you do have to play in that bare weather, that cold, that harsh weather. And Detroit, luckily has an enclosed stadium, so they get to, be in the nice temperature controlled for the first 15 weeks of the season or so. So I think that's great for them. Crafty saying, bold prediction, the Lions blew their window. The Packers will overtake them this year. Boo! Boo this man. Boo this man. All right. Let's move on from the division champs, Kyle, unless you had something else on the Lions.
Nope.
Okay. So let's move on to the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams, the Chicago Bears. He makes that little awesome bear claw. It's
bear down.
It's not just the Bears. It's no longer just an awesome, great donut. It is a signature of Caleb Williams on the Chicago Bears now. So for the Bears, their season starts off against Tennessee. Then they have to go to Houston and Indianapolis, come back home for 3 straight games. Well, technically 2 straight games of the Rams and Carolina before going across the pond and facing the Jacksonville Jaguars in a technical home game. This is going to be a tough assignment the first 3 weeks. Tennessee, depending, again, this is week 1, so this is going to be the first we see of everyone and everything. How does Will Levis, how is he connected with his wide receivers that were just acquired, right? And DeAndre Hopkins, of course, who's been there a year already. How is he connected with them as a quarterback? Is this offensive line going to hold up with a rookie offensive lineman? How well is the Bears defense going to be? And then they go to Houston. They face one of the biggest young quarterbacks, brightest young quarterback in CJ Stroud in that defense that went to the AFC divisional round in a huge surprise season last year. And then Indianapolis, they face Richardson, Steichen offense. I think it's going to be tough for the Bears, kind of starting off. But then they play the Commanders, the Patriots, the Vikings. A lot of these games, at least in terms of the NFL strength of schedule, seems to be favoring the Bears and Caleb Williams kind of throughout the season. So those are some good things and some bad things for the Bears schedule. I know you mentioned some things about the Bears schedule as well, so I'll let you go.
Yeah, so the Bears get a lot of, and now what I said, I didn't say that the Bears don't have a difficult game until the end of the season. I'm just simply pointing at the fact that they don't play an elite defense. Houston game, Houston was 14th last year in total yards. So you're getting a middle of the pack defense. I expect them to be a little bit better another year with DeMeco Ryans, but this isn't, one of the top, the 49ers, the Ravens, the Cowboys, Jets, Chiefs, Browns. Yeah. You're getting a game where it's like, okay, can Caleb Williams go toe to toe with CJ Stroud? Well, I mean, the Bears could have drafted CJ Stroud last year. They opted to go with Caleb Williams. So this game does matter a lot, whether, nationally they talk about it or, Bear fans, of course, aren't going to want to put unnecessary pressure on him, but we're all thinking it. That game does matter. So then, the Colts, the Rams, not an elite defense. And now you got Aaron Donald gone. I do expect them to be a decent team with drafting Braden Fisk and what was the best edge? Jared Verse. Getting both of those guys, that's going to be maybe a better defense, but still, you're not talking about an elite defense. Jacksonville was 20 something and then you hit your bye week. So as far as like the Bears, I don't know if they're going to get off to a 4-5-0, start. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that Caleb Williams is going to get to dip his toes in the pool and, have some time. It's not like, the Broncos where it's Tampa Bay, Jets, Steelers, Seahawks, like Bo Nix is going to really be kind of thrown into the fire. Whereas this is a little more favorable. And then you get Commanders, Arizona, New England, yawn, Green Bay. And that's kind of one of the biggest points I came away with is that the Bears don't play an NFC North opponent till week 11.
Yep.
Which is, I said, this is kind of an unorthodox year, but this is even more so. The fact that the Bears, aren't going to have a battle with a rival until towards the end of the season, and then you're going to get a lot of them. All right. So I think it's fun that fans are going to have to wait until well into the season to see the highly anticipated divisional rivalry with the Green Bay Packers, this whole thing. I thought that was going to be week 1. I was way off on that. So that stood out. And then the Bears playing the AFC South and the NFC West. I think those are two divisions that, not that, I mean, they both have some challenging teams, but not necessarily like playing the AFC North, So I think that things are kind of favorable for the Bears. And then the one thing is they only play at home 3 times in their first 9 games. But like I said, these matchups against, mediocre to bad defenses is really in the Bears' favor. I think the whole schedule really this is the best case scenario. If you were to say, this is how many home games you got to play, these are your opponents, and you wanted to make it the best case scenario for the Bears, I think that's what happened here.
Yeah. And you can look at this divisional opponent not till week 11 as like a good and a bad thing, right? Because you had 10 weeks to build up your record and your abilities to really give your all, right, for these divisional opponents against Green Bay starting off. That could be a good thing. It could also be a good thing in terms of like, okay, where are these other guys, our other division opponents, sitting within our division record, right? Does Green Bay have a 2-0 record versus Minnesota and Detroit right now? And if so, well, we got to give them their first loss in week 11. What is the division race looking like? Who is going into the postseason, or who is looking closer to be in the postseason? Because like I said, week 10 or 12, that's when you're really looking at like, okay, we really need to make a run here. What better way to do that and to kind of motivate, your team than to be like, if we sweep our division in these last 7-6 weeks, like we're in the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like if we go 6-0 in the division, or 5-1, 4-2, and we just have the better division record, we're in the playoffs, guys. Like this is a good kind of landscape to look at everything and just be like, I know what we need to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And the bad side is,
if you guys go 6-0 in your division, I will personally give you a blowjob.
I hope it happens.
And I hope it happens.
And I hope it happens. So, but the bad thing is that as well, right? Like you don't play divisions until week 11, which could be a bad thing. What's your record look like? Are you having a shitty year? Is the defense really maybe not up to snuff like it was last third of the season last year? Who knows? There's 2 ways you can look at this, but I totally agree with you. I think this schedule, in terms of defenses that Caleb Williams will have to go against, in terms of quarterbacks that he'll have to go against, take away CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, Jared Goff in the division, all those quarterbacks. I think it's very favorable. And like you said, they're giving them the Texans treatment. They're giving them you're a big city, you're a big sports city, you need to start stepping it up, guys, type of schedule. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah. And also with 3 primetime games. So, you're going to get some of those. The Houston game is going to be awesome. That's Sunday Night Football. Waiting
Yeah.
all day for
Oh,
Sunday
Sunday
night.
night.
All right,
Woo!
you sit check on me. See, the Bears and Texans are the best on TV. The stadium's rocking, and they're now. I'm so excited, dude. I can't believe we're gonna be making predictions soon.
I know. Stay tuned, everybody, because I think August is when we're gonna do our division predictions, if I'm not mistaken. Probably somewhere around there. This is just all super exciting. But
It
yeah,
is,
I'm excited, man.
but I will say, if the Bears can just handle their business and get to December, they're going to have a very difficult stretch in December. But if they
Mhm.
have already gotten that identity and that momentum going at that point, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, you're going to Detroit, you're going to San Francisco, you're doing to Minnesota.
Yeah.
Minnesota, not a huge one, but then
Still a
Detroit,
road game. Yeah.
Seattle, Green Bay, and a divisional road game for that
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
So I think when we're revisiting the Bears season, however it goes, I think if this isn't a playoff team, I think there's going to be a lot of Bears fans that are disappointed because it's like, okay, it's not like our schedule is going to be easier next year. But as
Yeah.
long as you see like, okay, there was something there at this point, and honestly, I think it's got to happen sometime in October. Like, so they got a couple games that are tough, but really,
Mhm.
the Bears, when you look at their roster, it's too talented. You know, you get the Patrick Mahomes quarterback. Like, okay, everything's lined up. It's up to the
Mhm.
Bears to make it happen, though.
Yeah, if they can beat Carolina, go to London, beat Jacksonville, go into their bye week, 2-0 at least in those 2 weeks of October, come out, go into Washington and hopefully wreck them. I mean, that October stretch, like you're saying, that's a nice one to kind of go into November, 2 weeks before your first divisional opponent. Like that, to me, that's a really good stretch. So enough about the Bears.
Are we
Let's
going to the
move on
Vikings?
to the Vikings. We're moving on to the Vikings.
Okay, I got something.
Let's do it.
What you got first? What you got first?
Kyle, what you got for us, Kyle?
Every single year, there's optimism at this point in the season. Every team has something to believe in. It could be anything, right? But every year, the NFL comes out with an over-under, and it's never lower than about 4.5 games. So even the teams that are like, oh, they're in a rebuild year, they still get 4.5. But
Yeah.
every year, there's a team that gets 2 or 3 wins, and we can never predict who it's going to be, right? It's very, very ballsy to say
Oh.
that there's going to be a team that wins 2 or 3 football games. And it always sounds a little out of sorts, but at the end of the year, there's always those teams that didn't. It's the Minnesota Vikings this year. The
Really?
Minnesota Vikings are arguably in one of the toughest divisions in football. And now let's just go down this schedule for a second. Let's go on a field trip, okay? New York Giants on the road, the Giants at home. Maybe you could say that that's a toss up 50-50. I'll give you
Yeah.
that. I still think the Giants at home week 1 I think the Giants win this game. And then
Me too.
you go to San Francisco.
No,
Lost.
they're at home against San Francisco.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It
Lost.
doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Yeah.
At home against Houston. L. At Green
Loss.
Bay. L. Versus the New York Jets. L. Bye week. So let's just say they're 1 in, if they beat the Giants, you're looking at 1 in 5 at the bye week or 0 in 6. A team looking for an identity without Kirk Cousins and JJ McCarthy kind of thrown into the fire, or Sam Darnold, whatever. Then you come out of the bye week and you're playing Detroit. L. Then you play the Rams. L. Indianapolis. We'll see. I'll get maybe, probably not, right?
Okay.
But they got to win, a couple. But I think it's an L. Then they go to Jacksonville. Okay, L. At Tennessee, that's a chance they could win their first game of the season. Normally, 0-11 around week 12 is when you see these teams get their first win.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when you see the teams that are undefeated get their first loss. It's
Mm-hmm.
around this time of the year. So I'll give them a win there. You're 1-11 at Chicago, L. Versus Arizona, L. at,
Oh, okay.
at Atlanta, L. Chicago
Yep.
again, L. Seattle, L. Green Bay, L. Detroit, L. And yeah, maybe there
Wow.
was 1 or 2 games that I missed and said L that you might say W. Okay, we're still talking 3-14.
Yeah.
So this is
Yeah.
the type of
That is
schedule
brutal.
where I look at and I go, if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan, it's going to be a long season, because the fact of the matter is, it's just like the Steelers. You're not a terrible team, but the teams you're playing are definitely better than you most weeks.
And
And you don't
that's
even know who your quarterback is. Like that kind of matters. Like
it
if the
does.
team you're playing has a better quarterback than you, then they have like an 85% chance of winning. That's how this game works in the NFL. So the fact that they don't even have an identity or quarterback, and if you just go down the quarterbacks, Jordan Love, CJ Stroud, Brock Purdy, Aaron Rodgers, Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford,
Mm-hmm.
Trevor Lawrence, Caleb Williams,
Levis, Kyler
it's
Murray.
yeah, Will Levis, we don't know yet.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
was the one that they could win. But for the most
Mm-hmm.
part, every Sunday, the Vikings have a huge uphill battle. And I don't see them escaping this year with more than 3 wins.
That would be extremely interesting for the Vikings. Wow.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
That's so true. I was like, oh,
It
the
doesn't
Vikings are going
matter
to
who they
San
play.
Francisco. You're like, no, San Francisco's coming to Minnesota. It doesn't matter that they're going.
And that was basically the start of their season, is basically what like my bad was. After the Giants, which we called a toss-up, you have to go home. Yes, you're home for the 49ers, who are in the Super Bowl. Houston, who's got CJ Stroud. At Green Bay against Jordan Love and that Packers team, who were very good last year. And then versus the Jets. That one they have to go to England to. That's going to be a London game. So you throw in the extra travel time into that. It's a rough stretch. Like you said, they could be 1-4, 1-5, whatever it is by week 7 or week 6 after their bye week. It's going to be a tough road for them. So that's crazy that you say that, because I didn't even really realize how bad the Viking schedule is going to be. And I guess just real quick, not to go too far off, but JJ McCarthy and Darnold are going to be in that quarterback room. You just spent the 12th, 11th, 10th pick, one of those, on JJ McCarthy. Are you going with Darnold no matter what?
Oh, there's absolutely no way to do this until OTAs happen and preseason happens. Like,
Okay.
it would just be like, throwing mud on the wall. I have no idea until I see them play. But like, as Bill says, what if JJ is kind of good? Well, if he is, I still think that it's not going to be instant success. I don't think it's going to be like a CJ Stroud type thing. I think there's a chance that he is good. Kevin O'Connell's a great play caller, but I just don't know if he's going to be that good. I mean, he is kind of a giant mystery, but the fact of the matter is, on one hand, I'm holding a mystery in JJ McCarthy, and on one hand, I have Jordan Love, Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff, like these Trevor Lawrence, like these are not mysteries. So yeah, he's not going to just have to be pretty good. He's going to have to be better than these guys that are borderline great, and I don't know if that's going to happen.
And we also have to look at too, like Sam Darnold, right? On the Jets, did not have a good career with the Jets whatsoever. Went to the San Francisco 49ers, was the backup to Brock Purdy. You talk about him going to the Vikings, and you talk about the weapons with Hockenson, Addison, and Justin Jefferson, probably the best wide receiver in the NFL, arguably, right? I don't think Darnold really had to go, throw that far in that San Francisco system, right? We talked about Brock Purdy, being an MVP type of quarterback at a certain point in the season. And a lot of people were saying, oh yeah, when you throw 5-yard dumps to Brandon Ayuk or whoever, we talked about what the yak was for those wide receivers. Is that system going to now be tailored in terms of like, hey, Justin Jefferson goes vertically, you throw it to Justin Jefferson? Like, is Sam Darnold prepared for that? Right? Or do you bring in this new JJ McCarthy quarterback who you can mold right off the bat to an NFL style West Coast possibly offense, right? Like not in West Coast like San Francisco, but like vertical down the fucking field type of offense. So I think that was also an interesting point, because you bring in Sam Darnold as a veteran, but you still don't really know what he has.
Yeah, and I think coming off last year where Baker Mayfield surprised everybody, and he was supposed to be just a bridge quarterback, and then all of a sudden he gets the $100 million contract. I think a lot of people are feeling more optimistic about guys like Sam Darnold because of that. But let's keep in mind that Baker is not Sam Darnold. Like, Baker was good. He was a number 1 overall pick. I know Darnold was 2 or 3 or something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
But the Jets drafted him, so that means nothing, right? But on top of that, Sam Darnold didn't win playoff games like Baker did in Cleveland. Like, we just have to kind of, manage the expectations with Sam Darnold. I know that he was, he had Kyle Shanahan, and maybe there's some magic that he can pull from that, but maybe that magic only exists if he was still with Kyle Shanahan, if that makes sense. So, like, I don't know. I'm not expecting Sam Darnold to surprise me this year. Not nearly as confident in him as I would be in like a Baker Mayfield last year.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Kyle, NFC North, you are a diehard Denver Broncos fan, but you got family ties with the Packers. So the Packers have, I don't know, they have a pretty like balanced schedule, I would say. The one bad thing I will say about them is their December schedule. Let's take a look at that real quick. They are playing Miami, but then they go to Detroit. Am I looking at the right schedule? Yes. They go to Detroit and then to Seattle and then to Minnesota. So 3 out of those 5 games are going to be away. Matt LaFleur has an 18-2 record in December. But with 5 of those, or 3 out of the 5 of those games being away, possibly something that you don't necessarily want if you're the Packers or if you're Matt LaFleur, because Lambeau Field in December, tough fucking place to play. Tough place to just be living in December. Let's be honest, right?
Tough place to watch a football game.
Tough place to watch a football game because Kyle was there. So I don't know. If they're away, you can also argue that the weather's going to be much better in Miami, for example, right? Versus playing in Green Bay. But also teams going to Green Bay and experiencing that weather can also be a very, very good thing for the Packers. So what do you think about that? And then what do you think about their schedule?
I think for the Packers, like if they need a late season rally like last season to make the playoffs, it will not be as easy as it was last year. And consider the 3-game stretch from week 12 to week 14. The Packers play the 49ers, the Dolphins, and Lions in 12 days. So another one of those. I know there was an AFC team that was in a similar situation we talked about last episode.
The Chiefs and the Texans.
Yeah. But those 3 teams had a combined record of 35-11 last season. The Miami game on Thanksgiving night begins a stretch of 4 straight primetime games, 2 Thursdays, a Sunday night, and a Monday night. The game against the 49ers. Don't think just because the 49ers don't play the Packers until late November that the Packers aren't going to remember how their season ended with the missed field goal with Anders Carlson and all the missed tackles by the Packers defense and Jordan Love's last pass that was just a terrible decision and was picked off. It all added up to a playoff loss against the 49ers, and the Packers definitely, I mean, I'm not even the biggest Packer fan. I'm the biggest Broncos fan, but even I know Green Bay should have won that game, and they kind of beat themselves in
They
it.
did.
I mean, it just, even, I remember even the fumbles, it was just a late kind of game collapse. But um I do think, and then you throw in 2 other playoff losses to the 49ers during the Matt LaFleur era, and it has become like a really big rivalry with the 49ers. My bold prediction is that Jordan Love is going to insert himself into the MVP conversation this year, because more often than not, I think he's going to be out-dueling people like Jalen Hurts, Matthew Stafford, CJ Stroud, Brock Purdy, Tua Tagovailoa, Jared Goff, and Caleb Williams. In many of those head-to-head battles, you got to remember Caleb Williams is going into the season Jordan Love had last year. Jordan Love flipped a switch, and it was scary to watch him play after that switch was flipped. I think of that Cowboys game. It didn't make any sense why somebody with no experience in a playoff game was so confident in that Cowboys game, the way he was throwing it, his decision-making. There's just like, you watched him play, and you were just like, oh, damn, like that's what an elite quarterback is supposed to look like. And I don't know how we got here this quick. But I always said, I remember doing that interview with my brother, and I was always saying, like, Jordan Love's going to work because of the way the Packers handle the quarterback, the way that they pass the baton. It's the right way to do things. And the Packers have done it now with 3 quarterbacks. And this is going to be another season where I think Jordan Love is going to be in the MVP conversation. He might even win it.
And I don't think after his performance last year, I think that's very doable for him. And like you said, that stretch where he goes up against those teams in San Francisco and Miami and Detroit, those could be some of those games where he begins to solidify his case even more so, right? Because it really does all depend how Jordan Love comes out, and really the Packers as a whole come out in the season. Because once it gets to those games, that almost like the meat and potatoes of the season, not really counting the division opponents other than that Detroit game, this is around the time, week wise, that Lamar Jackson was playing extremely well.
Yeah.
And got him the MVP really at the end of the day. So
it's a late season.
Love can do it.
Yeah. It's a late season award. You're right. It is about how you close the season. It's a regular season award. And they tell you that it's not about the postseason, but we know that both things are true. It's about how you handle business at the end of the season, and it's about how well you do in the first round in the playoffs, in my opinion. But also, those 4 primetime games, it's also about having a national audience. It's one thing for Jordan Love to outduel Jared Goff and Tua Tagovailoa. It's another thing when it's primetime and the whole world's watching. That makes it just that much more noticeable from the people that are going to be casting votes. But I don't want to just go over the Brazil game, because week 1, I feel like the Packers have a very, very challenging game against the Eagles. Both teams don't like the way last season ended. The Eagles have been to the Super Bowl in the last 2 years. Nolan Smith and who'd they draft in the first? Jalen Carter. Can those guys take that second season jump and get negative plays? Because I mentioned this stat, but when they made it to the Super Bowl, they led the NFL in defensive negative plays. Last year, they were 31st. So this game is going to be kind of like, okay, what are we doing now? Philly, Green Bay, where are you at? Early measuring stick, right? You get to know kind of where people measure up, in this game being in Brazil just makes it all that more exciting. So I think week 1, this is probably one of my favorite games on the schedule for week 1, Green Bay and Philly. Honestly, don't know what's going to happen in that game.
Yeah, because if you're the Eagles, you want to come out, like you said, you want to come out with the identity of Jalen Hurts passing it to his receivers, being in like an air offense, as well as playing that very, very good defense that got them to the Super Bowl against the Chiefs 2 seasons ago. So yeah, very interesting points. I like it. So let's move on to the NFC South, which I've already predicted. The Falcons are going to come out on top. But before that, let's boo this man. Let's start off with the worst team of last year, the Carolina Panthers, because they've got an interesting season ahead of them. Maybe not necessarily schedule wise, but just overall team wise. Obviously, Bryce Young didn't really wow last season. He was bad. Let's just say that he's bad. Kyle would say he was absolutely terrible. Dog shit. But starting in week six, the Panthers go up against the Bears, the Falcons, Commanders, and Broncos. 3 of those teams are definitely starting rookie quarterbacks. The Falcons, unless something happens to Kirk Cousins, probably not going to see Michael Penix. So rookie quarterbacks, teams kind of on the up and up. Whether or not they play well during that stretch could be a good thing for the Panthers. Could be, right? It really just depends how their team, happens to be playing at the beginning of the season. They closed the season with 2 straight road games, both against a divisional opponent. And those 2 road games are against the Tampa Bay Bucks as well as the Atlanta Falcons. 2 teams who made the playoffs last season, 2 teams who are more than likely going to be the favorites to win this division. So good and bad for the Carolina Panthers. Kyle, what's your take here on their schedule for 2024?
I think that the game against New Orleans, divisional game to open up the season, New Orleans might not be a great team this year. Mm-hmm. Then you got the Chargers, the Raiders, Bengals, Bears, Atlanta. I don't know if it's going to be much better. I don't know why I should believe that. I know they made a lot of moves. They signed some players in free agency. They added Josie Jewell. But is there any move that suggests that Bryce Young is going to take a huge step forward? And ultimately, it just depends on whether you believe in that kid or not. Like if you think Bryce Young is, was the best quarterback in last year's draft. Well, first off, can you pee in this cup? Because I'm going to drive. And then second off,
Kyle's just collecting pee. Don't listen to him.
I got gallons of it stored up just in case. But yeah, I don't know what to say about this. Like the Panthers are kind of that team this year where it's like, I don't know. I don't think they're going to be great. I don't know if they're going to be better than last year. Like that's a funny place to be where it's like you were the worst team in the NFL last year. And it's like, are they going to be better this year? Well, probably. They were the worst team. But how much better? Would they go from 1 win to 4? Maybe they can flirt around with 5 or 6 wins. It's still a rebuild. It's still a young quarterback. I don't know. Don't hold your breath on the Panthers. Maybe I'm wrong about all this. I would be so shocked, but we'll see.
And if we really look at their schedule from week 12, they're at home against Kansas City, at home against Tampa Bay, go to Philly, at home against Dallas, at home against Arizona, and then they have to go to Tampa Bay and have to go to Atlanta. I see maybe a win against Arizona in those last 7 games. Maybe.
Yeah.
So, like you said, how much can they improve from last season? Well, not much, at least for the end of the season. It doesn't look like they're going to get that better unless, of course, like you said, how can, if you believe in Bryce Young to be the best quarterback, like, will he show it in his second year? Did he really have that bad, terrible rookie year, which really wasn't that terrible in terms of like the team he was on? And will he jump, make that second year jump? We'll see.
He was ranked like 31st in almost every quarterback metric that exists.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say New Orleans, maybe they split it. I don't think they're sweeping New Orleans. So that's 1 win, their bye week coming there at what week is that? Week 11. So okay, let's just look at week 11 and up. You got New Orleans twice. Maybe you win one. Maybe you can beat, let's say, Washington and maybe the Raiders. So there's your 3 wins. And then
There's your 3
after the
wins.
bye week, maybe you beat Arizona. You're at 4. But I think any more than 5 wins is kind of a stretch.
Yeah.
That must
Like
suck.
it must suck. Even with the additions that they made, like you're looking at the schedule if you're a Carolina Panthers fan and you're like, what the fuck did we do? We got to face the entire NFC East and an AFC and the AFC West teams. Like, what the fuck did we do to the NFL? The
Yeah.
Panthers got cooked by that
David
NFL.
Peppers did it.
I mean, you're not wrong. All right, let's move on to Nolans. Let's move on to the Saints. They are tied for the easiest strength of schedule this year because they play 9 games against teams that finish under 500. Again, we are not necessarily supporters of the strength of schedule that the NFL does. Kyle obviously does his. But
well, the NFC South is always going to be the easiest because they all suck. Besides, Tampa Bay and Atlanta. But for the most part, it's like you got to play Carolina twice. You got to play New Orleans twice. So you're probably one of the easiest schedules just based off that.
Exactly, and even with New Orleans, they played pretty tough last year. There were some wins in there where you were just like, how did they get that dub, right? So you can expect that, I think, in a couple games against the Bucs and even the Atlanta Falcons, but I absolutely expect them to sweep the Carolina Panthers. Again, it's interdivision. They play each other really tough, but like I said, they're tied for one of the easiest schedules. But to start off, yes, you have Carolina, but then you go to Dallas, then you play Philly, then you play Atlanta, then you go to Kansas City, and then you play Tampa Bay. Like, that's a tough first 6 games, 7 games, and then even then you're still at home against Denver, which I think Denver is going to be a better team than the Saints.
They have Sean Payton,
and they have Sean Payton, which is going to be a very, very interesting game. And I think that one is on Monday night, Thursday night.
It's going to be a Thursday night football game, if I believe.
Thursday night football.
Yeah, Thursday night football.
Woo! That one's going to be a good one. So realistically, you're looking at a possible 1-7 start, depending on some miracles against, Atlanta, Tampa Bay, maybe Philly, right? So you're looking at a very, very possible 1-7 start for the Saints.
Yeah, the first half of the Saints' schedule is more difficult than the latter half. You look at the ending, like you said, Green Bay, Raiders, Tampa is going to be tough. Commanders could be feisty, but the Saints, who struggled massively offensively in the early part of last year, are going to need to get things together a lot faster to match up with teams like the Cowboys, #1 scoring offense last year. The back-to-back Super Bowl champion Chiefs and the Eagles. So I notice the Saints aren't going to have the kind of luxury of having a lackluster, slow offensive start. And it's like, how good can Derek Carr be? How good can Chris Olave be? Is Michael Thomas still dicking around in New Orleans?
No, he's a free agent now.
He's a free agent. Yeah. He was there for so long just because of that one good season 6 years ago. But I just don't know what kind of offense. I mean, they still have Alvin Kamara, who's getting paid very high.
Buku dollars.
And, Taysom Hill's still there. But it just kind of feels like since Sean Payton left, this team is just missing all of its juice. It's not just Drew Brees. It's also Sean Payton, because Sean had this team, even after Drew Brees, playing week 17 for a playoff spot, with Eli Booker, Taysom Hill, and Jameis Winston all juggling at the position. So, like, you remove Sean Payton and Drew Brees, and it's just like, it's kind of inevitable. Eventually, they're going to have to fire their head coach, and they're going to have to go into a full rebuild. I think this is the kind of year where they lose enough games to really clean house next year.
And let's move on.
And one more thing about the Broncos returning to the Superdome with Sean Payton. I don't know if that game is going to be an undertone of revenge. I was saying this the other day, but the Seahawks, when we got rust, it was very argumentative. It was very like, fuck you, fuck you. But New Orleans has been like nothing but kind to Broncos fans. Like, we got Sean Payton and they were like, oh, good. He's on. You got a good one in him. He's going to win a Super Bowl for you. So I don't know if, that's going to, be a revenge thing. It's just more going to be a storyline, if anything. But Derek Carr also played with the Raiders for a long time, and Raiders Broncos is a deep rivalry as well. But yeah, I think the Saints are going to have a really bad record heading into that game against the Broncos, and they're going to be one of those teams like the Vikings.
Kyle's already got targets on like the Panthers, the Vikings, the Saints. He's like, these guys suck.
It's 1, 2, and 3 overall next year.
He's like, this guy stinks. All right, let's move on to the Falcons, who have improved immensely.
How?
Especially at the quarterback position. You're like, what? Not to mention they got Bijan, they got Kyle Pitts, they got Drake London. They needed a quarterback. That's really what held them back last season. And again, clearly you could tell that throughout the season. Couple good things is the last 8 straight games will be teams that didn't make the playoffs in 2023, as well as the Vikings, Commanders, and Broncos, all with rookie quarterbacks, or at least the Vikings, assumably. And I think by that time, by the time they play the Vikings, which will be week 14, you could possibly expect to see JJ McCarthy in there. Obviously, again, depending on what happens. So for Atlanta, that's a very good thing, as well as the upgrade with Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix kind of just sitting behind them on the bench, learning improvement-wise. Bad thing for the Falcons. This is who they start off the season against. They start off against Pittsburgh, they go to Philadelphia, and they play Kansas City. All 3 of those teams were playoff teams. Pittsburgh obviously going through a quarterback shuffle themselves. Kirk Cousins' record against teams over 500 is not very good. I think just in general. It is not good. I think it's like less than a third of those are wins. So to be up against playoff teams, again, not that it matters because it's the season prior, still something to look at for those first 3 games. Could they possibly start 0-3? I think they'll beat the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't really see them struggling there, but Philadelphia and Kansas City, they can very, very well start off the season 1-2, which will be a slow start, given the hype that they're getting. But I mean, after that, things kind of cool off a bit. You got New Orleans, you got a tough game against Tampa Bay, but then you got Carolina, a Seattle team that is rebuilding a little bit with a brand new head coach. So there is some time there to kind of get back on your feet. But to start off the first 3 weeks against playoff teams the prior season, tough go for the Falcons.
Yeah, and for the first time in I don't know, maybe half a decade, there's actual expectations in Atlanta, and the NFL sees it because you see that they have 4 primetime football games, and all eyes are going to be on Kirk Cousins, and it's going to be interesting because if he struggles early in the season and fans start calling for Penix, you got a potential quarterback controversy there.
Yeah.
The league definitely sees a lot of potential in this group because you think Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, like these guys are all 23 years old or younger. This is a young football team that's getting Kirk Cousins. Speaking of Kirk Cousins, they got a revenge game on it with the Vikings on, I think, December 8th. He spent 6 seasons in Minnesota. He had success in Minnesota. I would consider Kirk Cousins in Minnesota a success. But he did go 1-2 in the playoffs. But I mean, as just a regular season, like the Vikings were relevant every year. Kirk Cousins was there. And last year, week 8, when he tore his Achilles, he was actually leading the NFL in touchdown passes at that time where he had 18. So you got to believe that he's going to want to send a reminder to his old team that, look, you should have believed in me. I'm 35 years old, but I was leading the NFL in touchdowns. This is a team with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. Like, you should have doubled down and signed me to, a contract that would have fulfilled my time in the NFL as a Viking. Instead, you kind of ship me off to Atlanta, and then Atlanta drafts a quarterback. It's kind of like, does anybody want me?
Chip on his shoulder.
Definitely a chip on his shoulder. My bold prediction, though, for Atlanta is that they're going to have a better record on the road than they will at home. When you go through their home games, there's a lot of really difficult games at home. You got, of course, Carolina, New Orleans, both you split away and home games, but you got the Cowboys and Steelers, who are both top 15 teams, and probably both of our power rankings. Meanwhile, the Vikings, Raiders, Commanders, and Broncos are currently ranked in the bottom 10 teams, and those are going to be some of their home games. So I think that Atlanta is probably going to have more success, on the road this year than they do at home, which is kind of different than most teams. I don't feel that way about it. I don't think any other team.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a hell of a take right there, and we'll see if it does happen. Let's move on to the last team.
Who are you kidding? We won't remember this take.
We won't remember any of this.
Remind us. This is your guys' job. Remind us of our terrible takes at the end of the year.
You guys always do. Last team in the NFC South is the Bucs. They made the playoffs last season from great play from Baker Mayfield. This season, though, in the schedule, the Bucs are one of just 3 teams in the NFL, I guess, to close the season with 2 straight home games against divisional opponents, which can be good, can be bad. They go up against Carolina and New Orleans, which, if what we're saying is correct, those are going to be 2 wins at the end of the season for Tampa Bay, who are, again, at least in my eyes, expected to be in the playoffs, if not a division winner, at least a wild card like they were last year. Or were they No, they were the division winners, weren't they?
Yeah, yeah. And they're going to win the division this year too.
Oh, Kyle and I are already disagreeing on division winners. I love it.
I haven't made my prediction yet. There it is, right here. A little Easter egg for you guys. Tampa Bay is going to be the division winner this year.
Wow. Over a 4-game span, though, for the Bucs, starting in week 7, they have the Ravens, Chiefs, 49ers, and let's see, Ravens,
and Atlanta,
Chiefs, 49ers, and Atlanta right in there.
That's your division winner.
Yep. And they got Philly early in the season. They got Detroit week 2.
Oh, it's tough.
This is going to be a tough one for Tampa Bay because they're going to have to earn their playoffs this year, it looks like.
Yeah, the Bucs play the defending AFC West champions, also Super Bowl champions in the Chiefs, the defending NFC and NFC West champions in the San Francisco 49ers, the NFC North champion Detroit Lions, the AFC North champion Ravens, the NFC East champion Cowboys, and yet somehow they're tied for the 5th easiest schedule based on opponents' win-loss record last year. Horse shit. Right.
This is why it doesn't make sense.
This is why it doesn't make any sense. The Bucs lost to Jared Goff and the Lions twice last year, losing 20-6 in week 6. And then they lost in the divisional round after being tied 17-17. That was a hell of a game, by the way. Now they're going to get another game against I like how that rivalry's kind of come out a little bit. And it's really cool because Baker played with the Rams. And then, he kind of gets sent to Tampa. But Sean McVay, I think he helped him out a lot more. And now Baker Mayfield, the quarterback coach from the Rams, is now the offensive coordinator for Baker Mayfield in Tampa. So this kind of like created this fun little rivalry between Tampa and the Rams. But I think the Bucs are they're gonna be a really good team, right? They might have 3 divisional losses, which is kind of a lot, but it's largely because they have 3 divisional matchups in a span of 4 weeks, sandwiched between games against the Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, and Niners. Like, that's really tough. Those early divisional games feature games. Who is it? The Falcons.
Hold on.
The Falcons, who are a lot of people's, including yours, NFC South's favorite. Um, and I think that although their schedule is packed with very challenging games,
Mhm.
and that you could make a real argument that it would be easier for Atlanta to just kind of, win their games quietly while Tampa's struggling with these gauntlet teams. I mean, it could be
Yeah.
really difficult, but I really think Baker Mayfield and the staff did a great job of keeping Mike Evans and keeping Chris Godwin. And hey,
Mhm.
these are some of the things that we had success. Let's keep this together and get that continuity. So next year Baker can take another step, and then you bring in a coach that's gonna, be in his ear that he's comfortable with. Like,
Mhm.
I think it's Tampa Bay's to lose. I think any other opinion is not
Wow.
fair to what Baker's already proven, especially late last season and how he played in the playoffs. This is a team that
Yep.
almost beat Detroit in a Detroit team that almost went to the Super Bowl if they didn't choke. Like, Baker Mayfield could have gone to the Super Bowl last year. Like, I know that's hard for us to
Yeah.
like really understand, but it was only a couple plays away. His team dropped a lot of those passes, including ones that bounced off their hands and got picked. His team kind of let him down. It wasn't Baker. So I say all that to say, if Tampa made it to the Super Bowl last year, would anybody be taking Atlanta to win this division? Meanwhile, Atlanta
True.
hasn't proven anything yet. I know they have a ton of talent, but we said the same
Mhm.
thing about the Broncos. They're just a quarterback away. Turns out Jerry Jeudy wasn't that great. Like, it turns out sometimes you have a player that is an insane, incredible athlete, but he's not a good football player. And that happens more often than people know. It's one thing to have a lot of great talented players. It's another thing for it to actually work. And we have yet to see that for Atlanta. Tampa is not so much of a mystery. Mayfield can sling it. And I
Mhm.
think it's going to be a good year for Tampa.
Yeah, and really, I think the only question marks are like Rashad White, the running back for Tampa Bay, right?
They
Like,
drafted a new running back.
so they drafted a new running back. Whether Rashad White is gonna, continue to be the back, or they get that rookie in there, like the running back seems to be the only thing that's kind of questionable right now. The defense again was better than what a lot of us thought. I mean, and look what they did to Philadelphia, right? In the playoffs. So that was very impressive. But you're right. You're 100% right. We can't discount exactly what happened last season with the Tampa Bay Bucks, with Baker there at quarterback, re-signing or extending. What's the wide receiver they just they just
Mike
extended?
Evans.
Mike Evans. God, I'm so bad at this. You know what I mean? Doing all that stuff. So you're right. But I think
And
for
they
me,
they drafted Jalen McMillan out of Washington in round
oh,
3.
okay.
So you add a wide receiver 3. Bucky
Hmm.
Irving was the running back out of Oregon. And last year they had the league's worst rushing attack. Remember, they were averaging like the fewest yards per carry.
Yeah,
So now you bring in competition. You've already heard Rashad White publicly say he wants to prove this year that he can be one of those running backs that are top of the league. And he said, in order to do that, I have to average 5 yards a carry. Well, who knows if he's going to get to 5 yards a carry, but Bucky Irving averaged 7.1 yards a carry per rush at Oregon. And he led all FBS running backs with 56 receptions. So you're bringing in that competition. And this kind of feels like a Tampa Bay team that just reloaded. They bring in Chris
yeah,
Broswell from Alabama. And then they beef up the offensive line with Graham Barton, out of Duke. Like, I
true.
don't know. I think they had a sneaky good draft, and I think this is a good team.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's weird, right?
It is kind of weird to think that I mean, they're not too far removed from the Tom Brady era, but that is a completely different football kind of identity, right? Almost like you had Tom fucking Brady, right? Like it's just a completely different thing. They go a year that they kind of suck, but then they bring in Baker, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, or they were supposed to suck when they brought in Baker, and then look what happened, right? So very interesting. I think but I do agree with you. Like, we shouldn't take anything away from the Bucks and immediately crown the Falcons like I did, even though I'm still going to crown the Falcons. But I think that it's up for conversation for sure, because in a weaker
Yeah.
division with the Panthers and a much weaker team, probably the third worst team in that division being the Saints, I think you can feast on those division opponents for sure.
It's fair. It's fair, and you're not alone. And most people are taking Atlanta. So
Yeah, absolutely, and they're correct. Back to the NFC West, the final frontier in terms of NFC divisions. Let's start breaking them down, and we'll start with the LA Rams, the second LA team. The Rams won't be playing a single road game during the month of
all year.
October. all year. NFL said, you know what? You get all home games. They
Dude,
get
the Rams might be really good.
You think so? Do you really think so?
Think about how they ended last season. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp have been working all off season. They're going to be really good. They got a running back. They got a quarterback. They added Jared Verse and Brendan Fisk. Like, the Rams are quietly becoming a team that could be in the NFC Championship next year.
Yeah, and Brendan Fisk, right? Defensive end or linebacker?
Defensive end.
Defensive end. Aaron Donald retired. The defense, all of last season was the biggest. I don't want to say like hole in the team, but it was clearly the one that needed the most work, because even though the kicking was bad and Stafford was getting hurt, you saw the emergence of Puka Nacua in absence of what's his name, the other wide receiver, Cooper Kupp, right? Like, you saw when Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford were out, Puka Nacua and then Kyren Williams kind of stepped it up. But in terms of their schedule, right? Like, October is going to be awesome for the LA Rams. Like I said, they go to Green Bay in week 5. They have a bye week 6. They don't go to Green Bay. They're at home against Green Bay, at home against Las Vegas, and at home against the Minnesota Vikings. And then they go to Seattle to begin November. Out of those 4 games, not including the bye week, Green Bay really seems to be the only one that they may lose. That one may be like a, gets to the final drive of the game. Whoever has the ball can possibly win that. So that stretch of October can be very, very fortuitous for the LA Rams there.
Wow.
Big word, right? You like that?
I love that.
You like that? You like that? You like that?
Yeah, no, you're right. I think the Rams are going to be pretty good. And we mentioned Brendan Fisk and Jared Verse, but when I was at the Combine, everybody was really high on one running back. And it was not who you're thinking of. It was Blake Corum. And you look at their draft of those two, and then adding Blake Corum to a backfield with Darnell. What was it? Darnell. What was the running back's name that emerged at the? He had like a bunch of rushing touchdowns towards the end of the season. I think he got hurt in the Lions game.
Oh my God, I can't remember.
Anyway, you got a running back in him, and now you add Blake Corum. That's a real 1-2 punch. And then on the
Kyren
defense,
Williams.
Yeah, Kyren Williams. And then you add Cameron Kitchens, safety out of Miami, who is going to be a plug-and-play guy. And there's a lot of young energy around this team, and Sean McVay has proven to be one of the best coaches. So, yeah, Detroit's going to be tough. I love that. That's one of my favorite week 1 games. Sunday Night Football, playoff rematch. Rams got to go to Detroit, just like the playoff game, but it's going to be a ton of fun. Arizona, definitely a win there. And then the 49ers, tough test. Bears, I'm not sure if the Bears are going to be that ready, but we'll see. Then the Packers, like you said, that is a tough beginning of the schedule. But then you get, the Raiders and the Vikings, Seahawks, Dolphins, whatever, New England, Philly, New Orleans. Like, I think by this point in the season, it's possible that the Rams are maybe, I don't know, above 500 by only 1 or 2 games. But later in the season, I think they're going to go and win some really impressive games. Maybe it's going to be at home against Buffalo. Maybe they're going to follow that up with beating the Niners, a divisional game that's going to be on Thursday Night Football. So, and then you got the Jets, Arizona, and Seattle. That's pretty favorable ending to the schedule. But The Rams, if Matthew Stafford can stay healthy, right? All we've seen from Stafford is if he can stay healthy, they go to the Super Bowl. And then the year after that, what happened? I don't think he could stay healthy. I think he's dealt with injuries the last 2 seasons, but if Stafford wants to end his career on a high note, which I know he does, then he's going to be playing at a very high level, maybe an MVP caliber season that, he's not getting credit for. Late last season, though, people were like, "Oh yeah, the Rams became people's underdog team to make it to the Super Bowl." And I expect that momentum to kind of come right out of the gates, maybe with the win against the Lions. It's going to be a really, really tough team. The Rams are going to be tough. A lot of young players are going to be making an impact. Probably a couple defensive player of the year nominees. Like it's going to be a fun year for Rams fans.
And continuing in the NFC West, we move on to a team that is, I think, across the NFL predicted to have one of the worst records, if not the worst record, in the Arizona Cardinals.
They added 12 draft picks, though.
They did. You're right. And the biggest one obviously being Marvin Harrison Jr. And they added someone else because they had another pick in the first round.
Well, Marvin Harrison Jr. could be in jail by week 1. We have to wait and see.
Well, why the hell is he going to be in jail?
He's being sued for millions of dollars by Fanatics right now.
Oh, because he won't sign his licensing agreement?
Yeah, they're like, no, it ran through your NFL contract. And he's like, no, it only ran through Ohio State. It's the whole thing right now. Maybe not jail. That might be an exaggeration. But
Fanatics is going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. to jail.
Straight to jail.
You don't sign your licensing agreement? Guess what? Jail.
The man wants his money.
The man wants his money. The Cardinals, again, their schedule, I regardless of what their schedule looks like, I mean, they have a tough test against Buffalo week 1. And to have the Rams week 2, Detroit week 3, San Francisco week 5, Green Bay week 6, Chargers, Miami, the Jets, before their bye week in week 11. I like Kyler. I think it was easy decision for them to extend him or to, whatever contract extension, all that shit, even though whatever they were going through the couple off seasons ago with him, I think it was smart. And they brought in Marvin Harrison Jr. They got all these draft picks that'll hopefully be very good for their organization. But just looking up and down at the schedule and the fact that they are in the same division as 2 potential playoff favorites, one of them being the Super Bowl last year and the 49ers and the Rams, it's going to be a tough go for them regardless. I don't think you could have given them the easiest schedule based on performance of teams last season. And I still would probably be like, damn, them and the Panthers are going to be bad.
Yeah. I mean, this year's schedule for the Cardinals isn't really loaded one way or the other. I mean, there's a sprinkle of winnable games on paper, at least. And then there's games that should be a challenge. But that kind of prevents a wave of confidence and a wave of lows from happening. Yeah. I think they're going to stay kind of in the middle for most of the season. Their toughest stretch comes in October when they travel to San Francisco and Green Bay, then host the Chargers Monday night, and then travel to Miami. If Arizona can survive that stretch, I think that they could put themselves in a good spot for the final 2 games. I don't know if they could make it to the playoffs. I'm not predicting Arizona to be the league's worst 5 teams, for instance.
Wow.
I do think that they added a ton of talent, and I think if you want to know how well they're coached, just take a look at how the Eagles performed last year without their coordinators. I think that they are coached well. I think they got the right coach. I think one way to expedite a rebuild is to draft 12 players in the draft. That's an insane amount of talent that they brought onto the team. They do have a revenge game. Cliff Kingsbury returns week 4 to Arizona, where he was given his first NFL coaching job. That should be awesome. You can only bang so many Filipino women in the
Thai women.
Thai women until you're like, yeah, I guess I can't stay here forever. I gotta go back. But
it's like He's like, my dick's so raw. I gotta go back to the States. I can't.
He was like, "Oh man, I have so many children in the Philippines. I have to abandon them. I'm coming back to football."
Oh, I love this comment by Nick. He said, Arizona stock crashing like an Iranian helicopter. Oh my God.
Only football at night. Um,
Woo!
bold prediction. The Cardinals are in prime position to take control of their season by the time the calendar flips to October. An opener against the Bills is going to be really tough for them. But
Yeah.
they've built a roster to make a playoff run. And this is a team that I think is going to surprise a lot of people. I think the Cardinals can use home field advantage to put themselves in a good spot heading in to the rest of the season after that. Back-to-back road games 3 times possibly puts them on I don't know, man. We're not going to get too deep into it, but you see what I'm saying about the Cardinals and they're coached well, and Kyler Murray being healthy all year and the talent.
Yeah, and again, I forget who their tight end was, but their tight end was doing very well towards the end of last season, especially what I saw in the Bears game. Again, a healthy Kyler Murray is the most important part. We see how integral a team is in the NFL with a quarterback, and a healthy Kyler Murray is awesome. So coupled with the coach, I agree with what you said about the coach. They have the correct coach. I think that just the identity.
Top 5, no debating. Top 5, top 5, top 5.
Wow. I miss
Fuck you guys.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm done.
I think the identity for the Cardinals, though, is something that this season they're going to start creating. I don't think they've got the identity yet. They do have a roster full of very good potential. Top 5, no debate. But the people they brought in during the draft, like I said, it's hopefully most of them work out. I know Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to work out. Head on fire. What's up? I still just don't. I see them being one of those 5 teams that has the worst schedule, though. I have to disagree with you there. I see them with one of the worst schedules, especially with that stretch. Those before their bye week in week 11. I mean, their season can be over by the end of week 10. You know what I mean? It could.
Yeah, no, it could be. Kyler Murray's got a lot to prove. They've bought into him though. I think he collected like 20 or 40. I don't know. It's monopoly money, but a ton of millions of dollars that kicked in. And basically, if the Cardinals were going to make a move to pivot away from him, they wouldn't have let that happen. So they believe in Kyler. And we've seen the Cardinals go 6-0 just 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And then, they had a down year and they dealt with injuries. But I think that Marvin Harrison, we'll see.
Yeah.
It's a we'll see at the moment.
Yeah. Let's move on to the third team, the team that is closest to where I live, the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks were in contention for a little bit there for the playoffs last season. I really wanted them to make the playoffs because, again, I live the closest to Seattle. It's awesome when the football team in the city is doing well. The atmosphere is awesome, but clearly they just weren't ready. Geno Smith was not playing like Geno Smith of 2022. They had some comeback games where it was starting to get exciting. They got Witherspoon, cornerback, very exciting stuff from him. Their schedule isn't amazing either. They get Denver and New England the first 2 weeks. Tough opening week. I mean, Denver alone. They're going to have basically probably 2 rookie quarterbacks to start off, which is favorable again for the Seahawks. But again, who knows how that season's going to start off. Then they got Miami. They got Detroit, the Giants, coin flip, San Francisco, Atlanta, Buffalo, and the Rams, all before their week 10 bye. The Seahawks are another team that their season can be over before their bye week because that is a tough stretch. And they have a rookie head coach. So it is going to be tough for them. Who knows how Gino is going to play? His OC, Shane Waldron, is now with the Bears. So I don't know, man. I think that's a very tough first half of the schedule for them as well. And I think they're in the same boat as the Arizona Cardinals. Like I said, their season can be over by their bye week.
Yeah, historically, what makes it really tough for West Coast teams is when they travel to the East Coast teams and then they play in what would be the 10 a.m. slot in the West Coast, right? But it's weird because it's like 10 a.m. their time. But the Seahawks are going to make 4 trips to the Eastern time zone, but only 3 of them are in the 10 a.m. spot. So they do have that going for them. The week 10 bye isn't as late as Seattle might prefer, but it's better than the week 5 bye they had last year. And according to betting analyst Bill Sparrows, the 25,797 miles the Seahawks will travel is this season is the 3rd most, but they're often at the top of that metric due to geographic location, because they travel far for almost every game. There isn't necessarily a revenge game on the slate this year, but I'll say the Bronco game is still going to be, a very spiteful game week 1 in Seattle. Again, the 12s are going to be out. Actually, there was a coffee mug it was a Seattle Starbucks coffee mug. I saw it today and I said, do you know why there's a 12 on it? And I had to explain the whole thing. So the 12s are going to be out there.
Yep.
It's going to be a tough game, but I think New England's very winnable. Miami, Detroit, difficult. New York Giants. Like, I don't know what to expect. The Seahawks are another team where they're going through a different era with a new head coach in Mike McDonald. I just don't know really where to view them. It's kind of like the Panthers. I know they'll be better than the Panthers, but it's also a little bit of an unknown with the Rams and 49ers in this division. Like, where do the Seahawks measure up to them? I'm not sure.
Yeah, totally agree. And we'll end it off here to wrap up the NFC schedule breakdown with the team that was in the Super Bowl last year but lost to the Kansas City Chiefs, the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers going to the Super Bowl, I mean, you knew their schedule was going to be rough, right? They got the Jets opening week. They got the Rams in week 3. They've got Kansas City, Dallas before their bye week, Tampa Bay, Green Bay, Buffalo, Miami, Detroit. They've got a ton of tough games to play. But if you made it to the Super Bowl last year, for the 49ers, it's going to be a tough test regardless. They still have a lot of the core pieces from their team. But I think this may just continue to prove that if they can win the division and go deep into the playoffs again, it just proves that, hey, Brock Purdy is a good quarterback. They have a good coaching system behind them. So all this down talk about the 49ers and Brock Purdy and being a system quarterback and a system offense, like if they're going through these teams in the schedule and making it deep in the playoffs, it's going to be great for them in the long run to be a 49ers fan, right? But again, they have a very, very tough schedule to go through. They do have some very good breaks in between. For example, New England, I will say the Giants, Bill, I'm sorry. But they've got Arizona twice, obviously. And the Seahawks games may be some of those, like, I don't want to say breaks in the season, but they could be wins. You could almost characterize them as wins going into those weeks.
Yeah, the 49ers are going to be really good. Nothing's changed. They have Brock Purdy. They have Kyle Shanahan. They're going to be just fine. And their defense was really vulnerable last year. They added some pieces in the draft. I think that their defense will be a little bit better. The 49ers are eyeing the Super Bowl again. And like you said, it's not an easy setup for the Niners when you go through their schedule. They have a 3-week stretch right before the bye begins October 10th with a trip to Seattle, followed by home games against Kansas City and Dallas. And that really is going to set the stage for the second half of the season. What's going to be the hardest stretch, though, is the lengthy trips to Tampa before home games against Seattle, followed by back-to-back trips to Green Bay and Buffalo.
Yep.
And that's going to go a long way in determining the Niners' playoff chances, but most likely not their chances, but their seeding, whether they're going to be a 1 or a 2 or a 3. They don't have an easy schedule by any means, but they shouldn't. They're the defending NFC champions. Now, for the revenge game, it's obviously week 7 against the Chiefs. Kansas City has been the biggest obstacle for the 49ers, getting, beat by them twice in the Super Bowl. Now Patrick Mahomes is 4-0 against them. So this has become kind of like their big brother that they can't beat up. This is going to be a big game. Surprised to see it didn't get primetime spotlight, whether Thursday, Monday, or Sunday. But I think Nick Bosa is going to win Defensive Player of the Year this year. Last year was considered a down year. He had 10.5 sacks. I think this year Nick Bosa is going to take a really good step, and I think the 49ers are going to be just like they are all the time. I know the schedule is difficult, but it's like you look at Buffalo and you're like, oh, that's tough. It's like San Francisco is better than Buffalo.
Yeah.
The Rams. I'm sorry, but go through the schedule. You can say that these are very difficult games, but are any of these teams better than the 49ers? Is one of these teams, but maybe the Chiefs? Who else? You know what I mean? So I think the 49ers, it's good. It's going to be a great time, though, because we don't want to see the 49ers play the Panthers. We want to see the 49ers and Jets play week 1. Like, we want to see the rematch with the Chiefs and Cowboys. Like, that's what the NFL did this the right way. I mean, the games are already set, before the season. It's not like they just created these games, but it works out because if they finish first in their division, then they play the other first place teams out of the different divisions that they play. So that's why it's always like the good teams have a hard schedule, but I think the 49ers are better than most of their opponents.
Yeah, I agree. And you mentioned that they're going from Green Bay to Buffalo. They did the exact same thing last season, went 0-2 on that trip. They also have the Chiefs and Cowboys starting week 7. Let me just double check this. Week 7, they are going against Kansas City, and then they have Dallas in week 8. When they face those teams, Kansas City will be coming off its bye week, and Dallas will be coming off its bye week. So not only do they have a central to Eastern time zone, which they went 0-2 last year, they have 2 teams that are coming off their bye week when facing them, whether at home or away. So again, there are some tough things for the 49ers. I still believe that they're a good team, definitely a Super Bowl caliber team. But there's some things that they're not very happy with the NFL schedule, right? There's one bit, and that is those 2 things are of it.
And the Niners also changed their defensive coordinator, which was a major change. I think it's going to help their pass rush a lot. Yeah. They're going to get a lot more coverage sacks. And more importantly, Leonard Floyd was added in free agency, a really good edge rusher that's going to give Bosa the best compliment that he's had since maybe D Ford. So I think that's kind of all the little tiny reasons I think Nick Bosa wins Defensive Player of the Year. And plus, the guy's in the running every year. So
he really is. Like him, TJ Watt. I mean,
he won it not last year, but the year before
he won it. Yeah. The guy from the Browns. Why can't I think of his name? Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
Those guys are like, it's always those 3. Like it is always those 3. I mean, Khalil Mack's still been good. Last season, he was still really good. So
yeah, he had 18.5 sacks when he won it in 2022.
Jesus.
And he has the best compliment as an edge rusher that he's had since then. So I think he gets around 18.5, maybe up to 20 sacks this year.
I love it. I want to answer.
Hopefully none of them are against Aaron Rodgers week 1.
Yeah, because holy shit. Will Aaron Rodgers make it 3 plays this time? What's going to be the deal? I hope you guys enjoyed our breakdown of the NFC schedule. Please go back and check out our breakdown of the AFC's schedule. We go into depth into all the AFC's teams. We went into depth last week, so we hope you enjoyed both the AFC and NFC side. I do want to answer a couple of these questions that Grandizer asked. Question: which projected last place NFC team do you predict will be the surprise team this year. Cards, Panthers, Bears, Giants. I think for me, I think for me it's pretty easy. I gotta go Bears. I don't necessarily think it's going to be a surprise team, but I think from where they were last year and where they are this year, I think it's just going to be a huge jump. I also like the Cardinals, the Panthers, the Giants. I don't love what they do. I think, Bill, I think the Giants are going to be better as long as Danny Dimes is a little healthier. But out of those four that you listed, Grandizer, I think it's got to go Bears, Giants, Cards over Panthers. Yeah.
So are you saying which teams are going to be the worst?
More of a surprise team.
A surprise bad team or a surprise good team?
No, surprise good team.
Yeah, I got to go. I've got to go with the Cardinals. I think there's not that many teams that would surprise you if they were good. I don't think the Panthers are going to be good. I'm gonna go with the Cardinals. I know that Bill doesn't like their head coach, but I got to go with the Cardinals.
And then Grandizer asked also, do we have a Facebook page for the podcast? We do not, but what you can do is actually go follow our YouTube page, which is right down there, our own personal YouTubes. I'm Rick, and at Kyle Kitzman for Kyle. Kyle's doing some really good stuff, very Broncos oriented. So go check out his videos. Also, you can follow us on Twitter if you have it, and Twitch and YouTube on here. But Twitter is like the only, I guess, like way you can communicate with us outside of like in the comments section here, because Bill does it all the time and we love Bill. So, I mean, if that's an option for you, Twitter is the one.
Oh, yeah. Man, yeah. I got some really good interviews too. If you guys are, this might be my only chance to tell Nick. Nick, you're a Broncos fan. I know that you probably haven't checked out my channel, but I've interviewed 3 Bronco fans, totally different. Yeah. Different types of Bronco fans, young, old, and then my age. So definitely go check that out on my my YouTube channel.
Yeah, for sure. And Kyle, I think is it time? Is it time for the
Alrighty then. Best NFL team fits for the remaining free agents. Okay, so this is kind of the time of year where we wonder why there's certain players that are still free agents. So we're going to look at an article that was written that came out by ESPN about the ideal landing spots for 14 veteran free agents plus one big name receiver who requested a trade to fill remaining team needs or add depth. Okay. He says when he's evaluating player to team matches, he's looking for how each guy fits in a scheme, how he each might be able to help immediately, and whether the team has the cap space to add players. So this isn't just throwing a name against a team. This is thought of, on all 3 layers. So without further ado, let's get into it. Xavier Howard. Best team fit, the Houston Texans. Derek Stingley Jr., Houston's number 1 corner, is on the verge of becoming a real star. And the Texans did add to the defensive line this offseason with Jeff Okudah and CJ Henderson coming aboard and Kamari Lassiter being one of the team's second-round picks. This would make a lot of sense for the Texans to take a look at bringing in Howard to compete for the job opposite of Stingley. Moving on, Connor Williams, center. Best team fit, the Denver Broncos. This one makes sense because we lost Lloyd Cushenberry. We knew we were going to lose him. We didn't have the money to pay him when he signed with the Titans. But yeah, Bo Nix, he's going to require a solid offensive line, especially those beginning games on the schedule. Williams did tear his left ACL last season, but just before the injury, he registered a pass block win rate of 93.9, which would have ranked just outside top 10 centers in the NFL. Justin Simmons, best team fit. Don't do this. Don't do this to my boy. Tennessee Titans. They gave his number away. Like they already gave his number away. I was like, can we get a year? Like, holy
Yeah,
crap.
I feel that. I feel that the Bears did that sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, the top safety is still available, and it would be an easy fit under new Tennessee defensive coordinator Denard Wilson. Simmons is a high-level communicator in the secondary with deep range and great ball skills, and he's
Ooh.
had at least 3 interceptions in 6 straight seasons, highly productive and strong run supporter. In Tennessee, Simmons would start opposite of Amani Hooker, giving Wilson 2 interchangeable safeties with scheme versatility, bolstering a rapidly improving secondary that added cornerbacks L'Jarius Sneed from Kansas City and
Yep.
Chidobe Awuzie this offseason. Stephon Gilmore, best team fits to the Panthers. With Gilmore, the Panthers would be adding an established veteran who can play in the outside or at the nickel spot. I still think Gilmore's got some good football left in him. He's 34 years old, but he's had 2 interceptions and 10 pass breakups last season. So he was good with Dallas. I think he's going to, right? These guys are too good to just disappear. It's just a matter of when they're going to get onto a team. Ryan Tannehill, best team fit, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. My sense is that Tannehill will wait for an opportunity to open up during camp. But if we're looking at potential team scheme fits, then the Bucs work. Kyle Trask and John Wolford are the options on the depth chart behind Baker Mayfield as of now. A healthy Tannehill would benefit from the expected heavy dose of play action in the passing game under new coordinator Liam Cohen. In 10 games played with the Titans last season, Tannehill completed 64.8% of his passes for 1,616 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 7 picks. Put Tampa Bay down as a team to watch with Tannehill this summer. And then last but not least, we have Michael Thomas. Best team fit. I love this one. This one makes a ton of sense. The Dallas Cowboys. When healthy, Thomas can still uncover and work multiple levels of the field. However, his injury concerns are legit, as the 31-year-old wide receiver has played in just 20 games over the past 4 years. And while Thomas could wait until after camp to find the best landing spot, let's focus on Dallas as a possibility. He could make an impact there on a 1-year deal. In Mike McCarthy's offense, Thomas could compete with Jalen Tolbert for the number 3 role alongside Brandon Cooks and CeeDee Lamb. He could align as a boundary X and show his ability to work in the seams out of the slot. He caught 39 passes in 2023 for 448 yards and a score. Not very impressive, but I do see the Cowboys as the kind of team that would want to capitalize on the big name. This is what they do. They get a big name guy that has a ton of injury.
Maker.
What did you say?
It's like troublemaker, just bad attitude.
Yeah. So
I love those guys.
They do. They really do. So, but yeah, those are some of the remaining free agents that are available right now. And the one I don't want to leave without saying is Dalton Reisner. This is a guy that I gotten to meet, shook my hand. He said he could do one autograph when he was running off the Seahawks stadium, and he ran right up to my shirtless ass and shook my hand. He did great for the Vikings last year. He's a guard, and he didn't even get to Minnesota until they had an injury, and then he did really good. A return to Minnesota makes the most sense for Reisner. He logged a pass block win rate of 95.5 last season, 5th among guards, while allowing just 2 sacks. He can drop anchor in pass protection to close down interior rush lanes, and he displayed a rugged play style as a run blocker in Kevin O'Connell's offense. Minnesota currently has Blake Brandel and Ed Ingram slated to start, and I think one of those guys is who they drafted in the second round. But Dalton Reisner, I feel bad for this guy. Like he is such a good player. Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee, great person, and for some reason nobody wants to pay him what he deserves. I don't know what it is. Like there's nothing about him that he shouldn't be paid. Sometimes people just get unlucky.
I was gonna say, I honestly wouldn't mind the Bears signing him. I mean, if he's already doing that well or did that well with the Vikings last season, the Bears need some depth, especially at offensive line. They did draft an offensive lineman, but there's never too many offensive linemen you can have in terms of depth, especially when you believe you just drafted your franchise quarterback.
Sure,
why not have those?
Well, the biggest thing keeping Reisner from being signed is contract negotiations. Like he wants to be paid like a top 10 guard in the NFL, and people are not wanting to pay him like a top 10 guard. So it's strictly financial why Dalton Reisner's not. So whoever does it, It's just kind of like he's playing chicken, and somebody's going to have to budge, or he's not going to play this year, which I don't see happening.
Grandizer wants to know who the best sponsor fit would be for the Only Football podcast. Manscaped,
Ooh.
Underdog Fantasy, Blue Chews, DraftKings, Bang Bus. I like Bang Bus.
I like Gatorade.
I like Bang Bus. I like Pornhub. I like those. Those are my favorite ones. I'm down to do those.
Gatorade.
Zip
Fizz. That would be fun.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, those are the Prime is the new upcoming drink. I still think Gatorade's, the OG. You got to go with Gatorade. Powerade, I would take something healthy. Something.
Yeah,
something
I was
sporty.
Gonna say, yeah, that, and I would also like that Manscaped. That would be kind of cool. I wouldn't mind that. Like,
would they send me a package? I just had to trim my pubes with my dog's shaver.
Manscaped, if you're listening, get this guy a fucking man lawnmower, whatever the fuck it's called. The Man Mower 2.7.
Lawnmower. I just like such a ridiculous name for a pube trimmer.
But if they sponsor us,
Bill!
We will absolutely do it. But Bill, I'm the best Only Football podcast sponsor, and it's not even close. You're goddamn right, Bill.
You are, Bill.
You're goddamn right. Which leads me into my closing comments. Guys, we are about to head into the Only Football podcast season 3 at the beginning of the 2024 NFL season. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff. We if you're somewhat new here or you really weren't following us last season, we stream every Sunday, every primetime game. There are some holidays where we may or may not stream depending on what the situation is. But for the most part, I would say 90% of the games we stream here on the Only Football podcast here on YouTube. Your contributions make a huge, huge difference. Like Bill's saying here. Last episode on Thursday, I believe, Bill and KC paid for our, Peacock subscription?
Subscription.
Yeah. So that way, when that game of the month or whatever comes around, we have got a subscription to Peacock for those games. So this is what I'm saying. Like, these super chats are going to be super helpful to both Kyle and I going into this season, helping us pay for our YouTube TV, our VPN to watch all the games, the Peacock subscriptions, just trying to bring you guys even better content, right? So we would really, really appreciate, and we do appreciate that Bill, Casey, everyone who's already donated, but we really, really appreciate more super chats coming in because we would love to do this as an everyday job. Like, can you imagine, Kyle, just like Monday through Friday plus Sundays or whatever games are on, we are just streaming and that's all we do?
That would be sick. Oh, by the way, Bill, I did get that job. So I got the job. So not gonna affect anything here. But yeah, it will be cool the day that I can, be like, this is what I do full time. This is and it's a tough business, because it doesn't slow down, it never ends. And, it's a lot of pressure. It's easy to just clock in and clock out. This is like, you really got to love, this to do it, and I can say for me, it's, it's a big passion. So if that could ever become a reality where that's what I do for a full-time job, like, I mean, that's the American dream. It really is. Like that would be a dream come true.
It absolutely will be. And
you're muted.
Check. Can you guys hear me? Am I? I don't think I'm not muted. I'm good.
Maybe they can hear you. I can't hear.
Okay. Anything. I think everybody can hear me, but what Kyle said is 100% correct. I think later on this summer, what we're going to try to do is the oh, no, can't hear Rick. I can hear you. You sons of bitches.
Wait, which one is it? Can you
Yeah,
you guys hear me or hear Rick?
Nick's just being a butthole.
Bronco fans can't hear you right now. So
Bronco fans like this. But
oh, okay.
yeah, 100%.
It's really
Like Kyle said, like to do this for just as our income would be awesome. Later on this summer, we're gonna be starting subscriptions, kind of like all the big YouTube people do. That way we have a monthly income. And again, it's mostly gonna be paying for everything we use, whether it is our streaming service right now to bring you our YouTube channel, whether it is all of our subscriptions to, I don't know, Peacock, Netflix, whatever the fuck the games are going to be on. That's what we're going to be paying for. Whether it's going to be what Nick wants to see really bad, and that is this hat with a zebra shirt on. That's what's going to help me looking like a fucking ref, because the Bears probably aren't going to win 5 games next season. No, I'm just kidding. They better. But yeah, your donations, your help really is appreciated to us. I mean, I remember when we started getting all these donations. Again, Bill was our first and our biggest supporter so far in terms of super chats and donations. I mean, me and Kyle were ecstatic. We went from basically live streaming into the void to now getting, money to do this, which is very exciting. So every part of that, really does help. And it just makes us more, I guess, eager and just more motivated to do this. And like I said, every little bit helps. So thank you guys again. But I just wanted to say that before we signed off. And again, you guys can go follow us on our own separate YouTube channels at Yo, I'm Rick, at Kyle Kitzman. Again, Kyle's doing some awesome, wonderful stuff with Denver Broncos fans, interviewing them, creating a Denver Broncos community. I saw one of the interviews. I'm going to watch the other one that you did. And I just can't wait to see what else you got cooking, Kyle.
Yeah. One more. Said, no offense to you guys, I don't like that Google YouTube takes 30 to 40% of super chats. I actually didn't know that. Do you have a platform where you can get the majority of the donations? I think at one point we had a QR code, or something like that, but we could probably figure something out before the season kicks off of maybe like a Venmo or
we got a PayPal. We got a PayPal that we can put up here. Let me actually look for it. Bill, if you've got it, I mean, would you mind putting it up there? Because I'm going to look it for our real quick. That way I can put it on here. So it is, I'm going to put it in the chat, actually, at Only Football KR. So Devontae that right there. What did you say?
No, I was just killing time. I said Devontae Parker retired, by the way.
Devontae Parker did retire. I did put it in the chat here. So if you guys don't see it, this is it right here on PayPal at Only Football KR. If you guys want to donate, again, that would be awesome. We would totally appreciate it. That's where we get them like 100% of anything. But yeah, you know what? Like, I get it. The YouTube takes about 30%, so we get 70% of everything that's given through us through super chats, and I believe through subscriptions and all that. But to be fair, without YouTube, we would have a bit of trouble trying to stream this. You know what I mean? So right. YouTube's got to get theirs as well.
They get their convenience cut. It's also just like really easy to do a super chat really quick with your information already in. So I get it, but yeah, if you guys really are feeling extra supportive, the PayPal is there. But yeah, I just appreciate you guys, donating the bit that you guys have. So just
absolutely,
thank you guys so much for everything. And hopefully we can continue to make this podcast better, with everything. Of course, experience is going to make us better. And going into year 3, we're going to have a lot of cool stuff, new intro videos, it's just going to look, a little bit cleaner, and more fun announcements kind of on that later. Yeah. Thank you guys.
And Grandizer, it is going to be PayPal. PayPal definitely is for this right here. Yep, PayPal.
Google has enough sources of income already.
Right. Regardless, we're gonna talk too much shit on the hand that feeds us. But you guys can follow us on X or Twitter as well. Down there, you can follow me at and now Rick Kyle. Where can they follow you on X? Mama tried, baby. Mama tried.
You can follow me at FTBLONL. No. NFL with Kyle. That's the way it used to be.
I was gonna say only football fans know that shit.
Bill was I love when I've changed it. Bill was like, finally, shit. And then when I started my own channel, I was like, I'm not really sure what to call this right now. And he was like, why don't you just call it NFL with Kyle? And I was like, welcome to NFL with Kyle. This is what it's called now. So Bill
Bill's
actually named it.
Bill's like, I need some fucking residuals, bro. I'm giving you all the good shit. We love you, Bill. We love you so much. Yes, go follow us on X, go follow us on YouTube, Twitch, and of course on X and our YouTube. Obviously, if you haven't already liked this live stream, please do so right now. It helps the algorithm, it helps us in general, and we always appreciate the likes and everything. I've got a very blank background. I keep noticing that. Again, I'm in the process of moving. So once I move the background will be much cooler. I promise. But yes, thank you guys, everyone, for your comments, for your donations, for your questions. We always appreciate you guys here in the live streams. Again, we went from 0 to close to like 15 people here at the most. And we're going to continue to do so moving forward, especially during the season. It's going to be exciting. And I mean, it's about to be June, but Kyle and I are already scheming things up.
Already scheming stuff. I put the link to that. I think I did 3 interviews. This was my favorite one. It got 129 views, which is good for me right now.
Yeah.
So definitely check it out. This is old man wisdom. I think Bill was the only person during the interview that was there, and it happened to be the biggest one that we did. And then I just did one before today with another fan. So all that stuff on the channel, please check it out. I don't even, I just like getting feedback and stuff you guys want to put in the comments, because we're building a little bit of momentum over there, and any momentum I build over there is just going to come back over here. So
yeah, hand. Let's build it up. Kyle, always a good time, brother.
Always a good time. Love you guys.
See you.